After owning the MPC Live 2 for almost a year, I think I have finally found a way to make it sound like I want to. It's just, I was dreaming of getting that nasty MPC sound. Modern MPCs does not have sound artifacts like they used to.
What about vintage mode?
Vintage mode, although it sounds nice, it only takes you part of the way, in my opinion. It's probably very accurate, but it's not enough for me. I'm gonna show you how to get that old school sampler sound that I like without using vintage mode.
Wait a minute. Do you even own a vintage MPC?
I don't own any vintage MPCs, so I don't have like a first-hand impression on how they sound. This is more how I imagine they sound, more than like a scientific emulation. This is the loop that I made. In the main screen, press the I button and press the crown button over here to access the master channels, and you can choose whichever you want, but I'm gonna use the main outputs. Scroll down to harmonic, air LOFI, open it up. I know some of the processing I'm about to apply is emulating analog gear, and I also know that sampling isn't analog, it's digital. So let's just pretend that we are using a old school hardware sampler and then tracking it out to a tape, which is in the analog domain.
Okay.
Okay, so there's 3 different parts on the main screen in Air Lo-Fi, and there's also an LFO in here. I'm not going to use that one. This is kind of the digital domain. Old hardware samplers, they didn't have the bit depth that we have today. We could turn that down to like 12. Let's just see how that sounds. Not super audible, but what I'm gonna do later in the process is gonna emphasize that a little bit more. You can also turn down the sample rate if you want to, but doesn't really sound good unless you want that sound, obviously. But I'm gonna leave it at 50 kilohertz. Let's move on to distortion. This emulates analog soft clipping, I think, and in analog the audio doesn't really clip like it does in the digital realm. It just kind of gets smashed in a nice way, and you can hear it especially on the open hat later. I'm gonna leave it there for now, and then I'm going down to rectify. Rectify works as kind of a wave shaper, which is gonna add aggressive and harsh distortion. So let's turn that up. Take a listen to the open hat now. And let's take a listen to it without the plugin on it. I love that sound. The crunchy open hat. Love that shit. That's my jam. Let's add a little bit of noise. Noise modulation adds noise, obviously, and gear can be noisy, and that's what it is emulating. It just adds a nice texture, especially to the drums. But that's a sound that I really like. One thing that's a lot of fun is to put these lo-fi effects on the master bus before you start making a beat. That way it feels like you're making a beat with an old school sampler. Let's say you want to add a little bit more processing. We can add compression. I'm gonna use the vintage one because the vintage one emulates hardware compressors. I'm just gonna use a preset, light comp. I'm just gonna try and set the release. Nice and pumpy right now. If you don't want the processing to affect the sample, you can just put these effects on the drum track instead. In this case, the sample is from a vinyl record, so I might just do that and put the processing on just the drums. Vinyl sample doesn't need to sound more dirty than it already does. But if it was a super clean sample from like a sound library or something like that, I would definitely just leave it on the master bus. If you need dope drum sounds, you should watch this video on how to turn your sampled breaks into your own drum kit. Or you can just go to my website and buy my drum kit.